There, I'm Dr. Julia Salinger. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist based in Colorado. And one of my specialty areas is working with folks with insomnia using cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI. This is the gold standard psychological approach to treating insomnia. And as part of that work, I've realized how helpful it can be to really understand the factors that regulate healthy sleep so that you can then better understand what goes awry when it comes to insomnia or other types of sleep disruption. So that's what I'll be walking you through today. We'll go through something called the two-process model that describes the two main processes that regulate healthy sleep. So one of these is something called the sleep drive. And as you can see in the figure here, this is meant to represent that if we're looking at someone who tends to wake up around 9 in the morning, maybe go to bed around, midnight, that sleep drive might be really low for them right when they wake up around 9 and then builds over the course of the day until bedtime and then starts to more quickly deplete as the person sleeps, getting back down to that low around the time they wake up. Sleep drive is affected primarily by two things. One is your natural biological need for sleep. You may have heard the recommendation to try to get about 8 hours of sleep a night. But it's a little misleading because 8 is only an average number people might need. Your own body might need more hours of sleep. It may need less. And this is largely genetically determined. So one thing that impacts sleep drive is if you have been getting fewer hours of sleep a night than your body's biological need, sleep drive is going to be higher. Just like if you've been eating fewer calories than your body's need, appetite, hunger is going to be higher. Um, Another thing that affects sleep drive is the amount of time it's been since you last slept, like we were talking about in this model. And also similar to physical hunger, just like if it's been a longer period of time since your last meal or snack, you'll be more hungry. Sleep drive works the same way. If it's been a longer period of time since your last sleep, your sleep drive, your sleep hunger is going to be higher. One other thing to point out here, sleep drive works kind of like inflating a balloon. So just like with inflating a balloon, it takes more time for the balloon to fully inflate than it does to deflate if you take your fingers off the neck of the balloon. For better or worse, sleep drive is like that. So that's why there's this common sleep hygiene tip to try to omit napping. Napping can really quickly deplete some of the sleep drive, and it takes time for it to build back up. So if you nap close in time to bedtime, your body may just not be primed and ready for sleep by bedtime. The sleep drive might not be high enough. One other common sleep hygiene tip that has to do with sleep drive is the tip to refrain from caffeine or reduce caffeine. So sleep drive, it's influenced by the neurotransmitter adenosine, and adenosine and caffeine have very similar chemical structures. So when you have coffee or caffeinated tea or other types of caffeine, the caffeine can bind to adenosine receptors and delay the buildup of sleep drive. So again, this may result in your body just not being primed for sleep, sleep drive not being high enough by the time it's bedtime. But this is not the only process that regulates sleep. Like I mentioned, if you're watching this video, you have probably had times when you were feeling tired but wired. Maybe it had been a long time since you slept. Maybe you'd been getting less sleep than your body needs, and yet you might have still found that when bedtime rolls around, you were not able to get to sleep. That has to do with the circadian alerting signal, or what I'll just refer to here as wake drive. Wake drive is essentially our body's biological clock. It runs on roughly a 24-hour rhythm, and it impacts our endocrine system, among other things, and helps generate body signals like hormonal signals and core body temperature that help us be awake during the day and be primed for sleep at night. The wake drive is really sensitive. It can be influenced by a variety of different things. For example, the wake drive can be influenced by light. This is the reason why you might have seen the sleep hygiene tip to limit electronic use, especially in the evenings. The blue light signal that you might be getting from electronic devices is the wavelength of light that is most similar to daylight. And it kind of can trick our wake drive into thinking it's a different time of day. And similarly, the timing of things like meals and exercise can affect the wake drive, which is why you might have seen sleep hygiene tips like stabilizing your meal routines, your meal timing, or maybe exercising earlier in the day versus right before bed. Um, and then it's also important to consider that a high degree of stress or anxiety can affect the wake drive. And this was adaptive evolutionarily. You can think of if our ancestors were out, hunting and gathering, and maybe they were really tired, depleted. It had been a long time since they slept. It would have been adaptive to have a way to override that high sleep drive if they sensed a threat in their environment so that they could fight off or escape from a predator. The downside of this is in our modern environment, there are all sorts of types of exposure to threats that are not immediate survival threats, but that can still affect our awake drive and override even a strong sleep drive. So just putting these two pieces together, your body is primed for sleep when sleep drive is high and starts becoming the dominant force, outcompeting the wake drive, and when wake drive is declining. So healthy sleep depends not only on each of these processes, but also on their alignment. You want them to line up so that around your target bedtime, sleep drive is high, it's peaking, it's stronger than wake drive, and wake drive is starting to decline. Hopefully this video helps you better understand some of the processes that regulate healthy sleep, as well as the background for some common sleep hygiene tips. Thanks for listening.